Okay, Rabbi Sai. Last time we discussed the difference between a child and an adult. Child and adult is the difference between the mixture between a teenager is got the child that pulls him to the here and now, and the adult, the godel, that says, see the bigger picture. So, and this is the friction, the internal strife that is within every single person who's a teenager in particular, that you feel this pull in different directions. The child, the adult, the child, the adult. And we answered at the end of last week's session that the way to actually solve this conflict, this battle, this friction, is to side with the adult. And the way to do this is to actually look, what do Chazal say, what's the definition of an adult? So the difference between a child and an adult is what we call in Torah bar das. When you become bar mitzvah, you become bar das. You have the ability to have das. Now this is quite difficult to understand. What does it mean, bar das? He has the ability to know what changes between being a child and an adult, the amount of information you can absorb. There were many child prodigies, brilliant children who could absorb huge amounts of information. The Bumagon, by the time he was 8 years old, knew Kola Torah Kula. So you're talking about a child is capable of tremendous intellectual capacity. And you can have an adult who's as thick as two planks. So what's bar das? What changes when you're bar mitzvah? And Rav Moshe Shapiro explains something which is very important, and we're going to explain this and we're going to apply it to being a teenager. A bar das is somebody that not just is able to absorb information, know information, but understands and he grasps the information. I'll give you a mashal. What's the difference between a computer that can calculate incredible things and a human being's mind that might be actually quite far behind? A computer can be a lot faster. The difference is that a computer doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't have a grasp. There is no person that grasps and knows what it's doing. It doesn't have a consciousness. Whereas a human being has a consciousness. And that's something very important. The reason is because facts are external. Computers can churn out facts and information. It can tell you lots of things. But external means it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to who's the computer speaking? Who is it? What type of computer? What make is the computer? That's not relevant. Who cares? Who cares? As long as it does the job, it does the job. But with a human being, it's the exact opposite. Here, it's not about how much information that you know. It's about how much the information is absorbed inside of you. Inside of you. And it's part of who you are. Here it is important to have understanding that seeps in, not just into the mind, but it goes all the way down into the heart. In fact, there's a pasuk. And you should bring it into your heart. You first need to establish the facts, the understanding, but then it's a lifetime of work to make sure that we bring it further and further into who we are, make it part of who we are. We're not robots. We're not robots. We're not here just to spit out information, to learn information. We're here to absorb information. And that's why, for example, it's so critical that when you learn Torah, it's not about learning facts, it's about affecting you. There was a famous philosopher who used to teach ethics in university. And it was well known that he was unethical. He himself was an unethical person. He didn't follow what he was preaching. And when they questioned him on this, he gave a very clever answer. He said, and if I was a mathematician, would I have to be a triangle? Great answer. Funny. But you know what? In Torah, yeah, you would be. In other words, the Torah answer is yeah. If you're teaching something, you have to be that. Then obviously you don't have to be a triangle. What I mean is, you have to live. What you can't just say something. You can't give musa. Right? Oh yeah, everyone should be ethical, and I'm not ethical. That's the antithesis of being Jewish. It's about taking Torah and making it part of who you are. And that's called bar das. Bar das means you've understood it. The difference between a child and an adult, and this is subtle. The difference between a child and an adult is in how much you absorb information. Example, a child doesn't understand the concept of money. my father's a billionaire, my father's a trillionaire, whatever you say, he doesn't know what that means. He could say it, but in his mind, if you ask him what that means, he thinks it means constant Uncle Doovies. You know, loads of ice cream, loads of chocolate, whatever it might be. He doesn't translate it into any, he just absorbs it in his terms, but that's not actually understanding what it means. And becoming a bar das means you actually know what's going on. For example, you can only make a kinyan when you're a bar das, an acquisition. Why? Because you might be brilliant. As we said, the Vilna Gaon, he knew all about becoming Mitzvah Basra before his bar mitzvah. But a kinyan requires you to actually understand what that means. Now, again, it could be the Vilna Gaon's different anyway. He probably understood what that meant anyway, even so. But we're talking about not just information. It's absorbing information. It's the difference between being a computer and being a human being. The absorption of it. Why this is critical is because that means that's going to be the definition of what makes you a godel, an adult, is the more da'as you have. And da'as means inner knowledge, taking information and absorbing it. Yeah.
How do you change from the last day of being 12?
Yeah, so that's the point. It's a gradual change. Even though in Economy it's true that when you become bar mitzvah, overnight you become chayiv and mitzvahs. But as we said, becoming a bar da'as is a transition. So you're chayiv at a certain point. You're obligated in your mitzvahs at your bar mitzvah, that's true. But the transition as you move from child to adult does take time. That's what we spoke about last time, that we don't go from black to white. There's a grey in between. This is the in-between period, and that's why it's so frustrating, because you're kind of not sure where you are, but you're making that transition. Now, this is very important, because we're on a mission. Let's speak this week's Sedra. Avraham Avinu, it's critical, this is absolutely laying the foundations. Avraham Avinu is the first of Avinu. He's the first Jew, as it were, to walk the earth. That means to say, he's now the Av of Haman Goyim, the Av, our Avraham Avinu. We start from Avraham Avinu. And his pathway is also the pathway that we all have to take. What's very significant about Avraham's life? Well, many things, but he has to walk a path and he has to go through challenges. That's something significant. But Avraham Avinu is told, he's told like this, Lech lecha, the first thing you have to know is lahanoscha u'letovoscha, that this journey that we are all on, all of us, is all for our benefit. Where you're going with this path, what you need to achieve in your life is for your benefit. People often ask, many years ago, I'll say it this way, many years ago, if you did what's called a Kiruv seminar, where you're introducing people who are not familiar to Torah mitzvahs, you wanted to introduce them to Torah mitzvahs, Yiddishkeit, and you would do like a question and answer session. So, I had the privilege of doing this many years ago, and then the questions were, how do we know that Torah is true? How do you know there's a God? Let's argue about it philosophically. I once stayed up an entire Friday night, I'm not exaggerating, an entire Friday night arguing with somebody about, somebody who wasn't religious at that point in time, about God's existence and how we understand it. We literally spoke till I said, I've got to go daven nates. Literally. That's what it was back in the day. It was a big thing. Nowadays, if you ask people, what's the number one question? I could even try it here with you guys. What's the number one question that bothers most people? Right? What's the question?
What's a person's purpose?
Oh, that's very close to what I wanted to say. Meaning, they're not really going to say, but how do you know there's Torah? How do you know that God's true? How do you know all these things? The real number one question is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? You can dazzle me with proving me this and that, the other. That's all very nice, but I want to know what's in it for me. By the way, as an aside, the reason why that's our number one question is because we're subject to the world of brainwashing and advertising. I'm serious. The whole world works that they need to sell me a product. If you've got a product, you sell something. So, you need to convince me that it's worth buying that product. So that's what the whole world's doing, right? Buy me, get this, the best brand, the best name. Everyone's calling, yeah. So it's almost like that's how we view our Yiddishkeit as well. Okay, so, prove to me God's existence, but that's all very nice, but I want to know what's in it for me. It's all about me. Which the truth is totally wrong, because that's not a Jewish approach. It's not about what's in it for you, it's about what's the truth. But nonetheless, since that's how we are programmed, at least certainly in this generation, we have to know what's in it for us. It's not a kosher question, really, because the question is, what about truth? But the number one question is, what's in it for me? And Hashem answered that question. He said to Avraham Avinu, the first command that Avraham Avinu receives, Lech lecha. Go to yourself. You want to know what's in it for you? You want to know what's in it for you? The ultimate and the best and the most incredible you. You. I'm going to build you. Hashem says, I'm going to take you on a journey that's going to build you into the greatest person possible. The greatest individual that you could be. Everyone's different, and everyone's got their journey. But it's lahanosacha u'letayvasacha. This is for your benefit. This is for your good. Number one, that is critical to understand. You've got to understand that this whole journey, and whatever happens to you in your life, and whatever's going to be, Hashem, whatever path Hashem sort of schleps you in, it's happening. Yeah, we know it because gamzu l'tayva. These are phrases that are thrown around, but you've got to absorb it. You've got to understand it's for your good. You know, when you have a trainer, get a personal trainer. Get a personal trainer. They come in, they start working you hard. You work hard. They make you sit-ups and push-ups and punch bags, and then who knows what they do to you. And they make you schwitz, and you're paying this guy to mamash literally till you drop. And then at the end of the session, you pay him a nice amount of money. Comes back the next time. Now what happens if he sees that you're quite good? You're quite good. And he sees real potential. What does he do?
Work you harder.
He works you harder. He makes you schwitz even more. He gets you up. Now he sees, you know what, you're really good. You're really good. So you know what he does? He says, okay, you're a different league. You're a different league. So you know what we need to do with you? This is a different league. So you need to get up at this time in the morning. We're going to do crazy major training, and we're going to get you into national standard. We're going to mamash. And he works him hard and pushes him even harder and harder. And then when he sees, you know what? You're even better. You're international standard. You're Olympic standard. He's going to push him even harder. Which means to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hashem knows that everybody here, every yid, every person that's created with a neshama that is a powerful neshama, is Olympic standard, is huge. And so he's pushing us, and he's making us work, and he wants us to work. And so when we say, oh, why do I have to do this, that, and the other? It's for you. It's not why do you think he's building your muscles? Not just physical, I mean spiritual muscles, emunah muscles. He's building it because he wants to build the greatest you. This is the fundamental of the Aleph Sheba Aleph. What's in it for me? You. There could be nothing greater. There could be nothing greater than the you that Hashem wants. But I'm going to tell you something scary. It's possible to totally miss the boat. It's possible to totally miss the boat. Do you realize that you could live your whole life, and miss entirely what Hashem wants you to do? That's pretty scary, because that's not just a storybook, that's a person's life. That's a person's life. A person could literally, you could have so much power, so much koyach, so much potential, and blow it completely. That's called a tragedy. And believe me, there's many of those out there. That's how sad that is. You take somebody who's got so much power, so much potential, and to blow it all. So the first thing you have to understand is, it's a journey, it's for your benefit. That's what Hashem wants. The second thing to understand is that it takes time. It takes time. It was a journey. Even for Avraham Avinu. Do you know how long it took Avraham Avinu to become Avraham Avinu? Like, when did he get his Lech Lecha call? So the Rambam brings down that he started his quest at 3 years old, right? And Hashem appeared to him at 75. That's a pretty long time. That's a long time before, we have this like dream, Avraham Avinu, he worked for 5 minutes and then Hashem appeared to him and everything was great. It's a long time. A lot of philosophizing. A lot of trying to understand and grapple with existence. What's it about? It takes time. And even once he got that command of Lech Lecha, it was a journey that continued for the next 100 years. In other words, he himself developed. And famously we're told, why does it not say where Avraham Avinu is supposed to go? Go to Eretz Canaan, go to Eretz Yisrael. El haaretz asher arecha. To the land I will show you. Oh, come on, just tell me where. You can tell me, I won't tell anyone, just me and you. Go on, let's keep it secret. No, El haaretz asher arecha. The land I will show you. Why not? Spill the beans, just say where. And the deeper understanding of this is because if Hashem would say where, then all you would do is say, okay, so I'm going to some place, and there I'll sort of find out something. And you'll take that, what you know now, and you'll bring that to you now. Same example like we said before. If you tell a 3-year-old, you know what, one day you're going to be really great. So again, he thinks really great means I'm going to have a house full of toys. It's unbelievable. That's what he does. He takes the concept of great and he translates it to where he is right now. So Avraham Avinu, and even for Avraham Avinu, who was pretty good when he heard Lech Lecha, even for Avraham Avinu, if Hashem would say, I'm going to take you to that place, all Avraham Avinu will do is take that and translate it into where he is right now, which is what we all do for everything. We translate it to where we are now. Hashem says, no, I want you to understand, you're going to a place that's way beyond what you are now. So beyond that I can't even describe it. I can't even describe it to you because you won't know about it now. Because you'll just translate it into where you are now. By the way, it's another reason why you find in the Torah, we don't find explicit mention of Olam Haba. It's quite amazing. Why is Olam Haba not mentioned in the Torah? Such a fundamental, so important, one of the basics of Yiddishkeit. And we're told because Olam Haba, Ayin lo ras elokim zelasecha. Olam Haba is so beyond. It's so beyond what you have no idea what it is. All you'll do is you'll just say, Olam Haba is this great place of pleasure the way I understand pleasure in this world. You'll just translate Olam Haba into Olam Hazeh terms. No, just you should know, it's way beyond. That's good enough. And so too Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, you're going to a place, where is it? Where am I going? El haaretz asher arecha. I will show you. When you get to that level, you will understand that there's no way you could have understood it at the beginning. And so too it is for every person. When we talk about like a Gadol Hador, a really great person, so you know what we do? We think, okay, like I know a couple of Prokim of Mishnayos. So he knows all of Shas Mishnayos. I know a couple of Daf of Gemara. So he knows it all. I know a little bit of this. He knows a lot of that. You have to understand, somebody who is refined, he's worked on himself, he's a Gadol B'Torah, it's not simply he knows more information. He's a much bigger person that we can't even understand what that is, where we are right now. El haaretz asher arecha. That's the journey. But it all comes back to what we started with. It's all about da'as. Da'as means, how much can I take? V'yodata hayom. How much can I take knowledge and absorb it? And this is what is going to make a person into a great individual or somebody who is just the opposite, just bundles his way through life. And this is very critical what I'm about to explain and very important. Das, knowledge, as we said, it needs to be absorbed. So let's think about it and give you a great example, which is very, very important. We're looking for Hashem. Where do I see Hashem in this world? I want to get to know Hashem. How do I see Hashem? Where is He? Okay, so we could speak there's a lot we could speak about. But let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. Why do I say let's keep it simple? Because Rabbi Chanan Wasserman asks, I don't understand, he says, philosophers throughout the ages have argued about whether God exists or doesn't exist. Yeah? And all of a sudden the boy's bar mitzvah, you're chayav to believe and Imam ben Shlema and Hashem and all the mitzvahs. I don't understand. All of a sudden he's greater than all these wise individuals. The philosophers are still arguing. And he knows better. That's Rabbi Chanan's question. And he says, in a nutshell, the difference between them and the regular person is they have what's called nagios. They've got their own issues and things that is not allowing them to think straight. Think about it for a second. If Hashem created a world, do you think He expects everybody to be a philosopher? If you're very wise and very clever, great. But everybody's got to be part of this story of Hashem's world. So what does He expect? So there's a very important principle in life, and it's called svara pshuta. We always go with the simplest, smoothest logic. smoothest logic in everything. In everything. So you'll hear people philosophize, you know what, maybe, how do you know that you exist? Maybe you don't exist. And really, it's just you that have been programmed to think that you exist, but actually you don't really exist, nor does anybody else, and etc. So you can philosophize about that, and it's very interesting to have banter about such a thing. But the bottom line is, you say like, no, we exist. What? You just wrote the whole argument. Meaning to say, there's a thing called simple logic. And that's a certain program that a person has. So now, this is important. Everyone will agree that the world is phenomenal. And everyone will agree that the human being is phenomenal. Your eye, do you realize that the ability to see is mind-boggling? It's unbelievable. It's phenomenal. How do you take this little ball of flesh and from there you can create eyesight, even if you understand how it works? How do you create a conscious being that is aware of all of this? And if you open up a brain, you're like hoping to see some sort of magic thing. All you see is a piece of meat. How does a piece of meat, which is your brain, that's what it is, how does a piece of meat turn into me, a human being? I'm able to like be and like exist. How does that, what is that? How does that work? What's going on? Yeah, because there's neurons firing here and there. Yeah, I can fire enough neurons, I can also do that, and I'm not going to create somebody who's going to be conscious. Now you'll tell me this, that, and the other, but if you think about it, it's simply absorbing information. Absorbing. Very simple example. I once knew a guy, I'm sure you've known someone, he got run over, he broke his leg, in a bad way. In a bad way. About 3 different places, and he was in a wheelchair for months. It literally took about 6 months for him to walk again. 6 months. And I remember I specifically asked him this because I just get particular pleasure out of asking this question because I know what the answer is, but it's important to hear. When he had his broken leg and I went to visit him and see how he was doing, I said to him, could you ever imagine walking again? He said, no. Now, obviously, that's not logical. Of course you're going to walk again. You know, you're going to get better, you'll walk again. And he walked before. Can you ever imagine? No, I can't imagine walking again. I can't imagine it because I've been like this for like 3 weeks already. So you get completely absorbed, you forget about it. And then when you learn to walk again, oh, believe me, was he like appreciative of his legs? Unbelievable, you don't understand how good legs are. It's unbelievable. You can jump up and down, you can walk, you have no idea how good that is. That is unbelievable. Your legs are unbelievable. And if a guy has stomach problems and he's keeling over and he can't move, and then all of a sudden his stomach's wonderful. Now, if I say your stomach's hopefully okay, hopefully, not too bad. That's amazing. And you know what a blind person would give to see for 1 moment? For 1 moment. Can you imagine a world of a person, Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, somebody who's blind? He cannot see. It's not just, a slightly different world. It's a different existence. And imagine somebody who's never seen in his life. How do you explain color to a blind person that's never seen? Impossible. What are you going to tell him? Red, it's like that thing that's sort of...
Red.
You've got like traffic lights, red. He doesn't know what red is. How do you explain it? There's absolutely no way to explain color to a blind person who's never seen. No way. So that's quite freaky. But you know what that means? It means you have a facet of reality that somebody's never seen, has no idea what you're even talking about. He hears people talk about green and blue and pink and purple. He hears that, but he has no idea what that means. By the way, we hear about ideas of the neshama that's spiritual, and sometimes we also have no idea what that means. Because we're stuck in our little body and we don't realize that you have to have a sensitivity to something that's a different limb that you've never used before or never accessed easily. And to access spirituality, you need to access it from a different angle. Right? And can you imagine a blind guy saying to the thing, just describe to me red already. Forget red, do blue. Come on, do blue, just explain it. You say, well, blue, it starts with a B, and there's an L, and a U, and an E. Come on, you got it, right? You got it? I don't know what you're talking about. I bet the guy says, I want to know what's Ruchnius. He says, yeah, Ruchnius is Shockling. This is Ruchnius, right? This is it. Hello? That's like explaining blue by saying B-L-U-E. You're explaining the external description, and you say, well, blue's the sea, right? You ever touched the sea, you felt the air, water? So that appears as blue. I don't know what you're talking about, the blind guy says. Of course he's not going to know what you're talking about. So It's the same thing with Ruchnius. If you want to get into the world of Pnimius, the Ruchnius, you've got to use different glasses. You've got to use it's a different thing. It's different. But the important point here is to appreciate what sight is. Imagine a blind guy he's never seen. And now for the first time, he's able to see. I mean, you couldn't imagine something more ecstatic. Imagine, all of a sudden, for the first time he opens his eyes, he'd be like, what is going on here? What is this? You'd be blown away. The guy's going to be dancing on cloud 9 for at least a week. So why aren't we? What's happened to us? We got arms, that's great. We got fingers, that's superb. Nobody here, Baruch Hashem's got a broken toe. I once broke my toe. You think, what do toes do? Toes are like, I don't even know, I broke the toe next to my big toe, the one next to it. What does that do in the body? Nothing, right? Oh boy, you break that? Oh my, that's impossible, you can't walk, can't walk for my little bone, what's wrong with you? Oh boy, you realize every single thing of your body, every single thing, you can see, you can hear. You know what it's like to live in a world of silence? People cannot hear. Deaf legamre. You know what that means? Or nothing, no music, nothing. Can't hear, can't function. And we have all these brachas. And but you look at me and you say, okay, yeah, very good, yeah, it's obvious. Obviously sight is very good. Nobody in the world will argue that sight is unbelievable, or hearing is unbelievable, or walking and talking. All of it's unbelievable. It's impossible to argue that it's not. So why are we not on cloud 9? What's wrong with us? The answer is very simple. We haven't absorbed it. We just take it for granted. It's just normal. Normal people see, and normal people hear, and normal people, do all these things. It's normal. It doesn't mean anything to us. Are you mad? Are you mad? What's wrong with you? That's what's wrong with all of us. Says Rabbi Chanan. You know why people are, if you would appreciate all these gifts, you would be the biggest believer in Hashem, la'olam v'od. So why aren't we? Why aren't we the frumest people in the world? Why? You know why? Because we haven't absorbed it. We don't absorb it. It's external information. Human beings can see, human beings can hear, and we've got this ability, and we don't absorb it. If it's not absorbed, it's not going to make any impact. It's not going to make any impact. Rabbi say that is the key of all of your life. If you don't absorb something, you don't contemplate it, you don't think about it, you don't let it seep in, then it's not going to make the impact. But you have the ability, you and I and all of us have the ability to absorb it. And that's why we make brachas every day. And if you would think about Asher Yatzeh Adam B'Chochma, you would think about that, then you would be mamash inspired. You'd inspire yourself. You'd say, wow, this is unbelievable. And you'd be right. And nobody would argue with you. It's just, it doesn't mean anything to people. Why does it not mean? Because we're superficial. Superficial people means, yeah, the information's out there, and I'm just going on with my daily life inside here. But if you would take some of these ideas, which are so powerful, and everybody agrees they're powerful, you'd pay all the money in the world to restore, chas v'shalom, your eyesight. You'd pay all the money in the world. Why? Because it's so choshev. So you have $1 million, $1 billion right here. And you function, and you're alive, and it's amazing. But we're not jumping up and down because we're shallow people that don't absorb things. That's a tragedy. And that's why we make brachas on everything. If there was one tree in the world, imagine there was only one tree that existed. Can you imagine? Outside here, there was the only tree in the world. This thing started one day, like growing up from the ground, and then like branches. The whole area would be cordoned off. The police would be here. They'd be taking photos from everywhere. There's like major news. There's this crazy thing that's growing out of the ground. You have no idea. It's like weird, sheba weird. Up it goes and around here and leaves and then fruit coming out. The island were going mad about this thing. They call it a tree. Oh, it's not so cool because there's loads of those. Why not? It's still crazy. That's amazing. So we make a bracha, Bari Pure 8, because if we really realized what it means, wow, that a fruit grows from a tree, doesn't actually originate from a supermarket. If we realize that, then we've just absorbed God consciousness. And that's what Avraham Avinu did. Avraham Avinu looked into the world, he contemplated the world. Why was he different than everybody else? Because he said, I want to understand the world. The world is speaking to me. I want to absorb it. I want to understand it. And that's Avraham Avinu. And that's why every Jew makes brachas, because we're trying to absorb the information. It's not about the information per se. It's where does it hit us. You know, I used to go for many years to a Thursday night shiur by Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal. A phenomenal shiur every week. And we always used to say, the olim that were there, we used to say a phrase about the nature of the shiur. We would say, it's not about what he said, it's about where it hit us. In other words, did it go in? Did it absorb? Did it resonate? That's what it means. And that's what Avraham Avinu did. Now listen carefully to one last point. Avraham Avinu looks into the world. It's a medrash on this week's parsha, on Lech Lecha. And it says, Avraham Avinu looked at a world and he saw bira delekas. He saw a world on fire. A world on fire. And then he said, listen carefully to the language, Klum yesh olam bli manhig. Could there be a world without a manhig? Hitzitz olav balabira. The owner of the world appeared to him. Now that's very interesting. Do you hear the word that the Medrash said? Could there be a world without a manhig? Anyone know what's the difference between a manhig and a boirei? A boirei is a creator. The Medrash didn't say that. Avraham Avinu said, Klum yesh olam bli boirei. Could there be a world without a creator? He didn't say that. He said, Klum yesh olam, could there be a world bli manhig? What's a manhig? You know, what's a manhig? Nahag. A nahag in modern Hebrew is a driver. A manhig. Avraham Avinu said, could there be a world without a driver? A manhig. What's the difference between a driver and a creator?
Continuously.
A boirei, Hashem is the creator of the world. That was always known. Boirei, Hashem created the world. A manhig means he's constantly involved. He's constantly willing the world into existence. And that's why it says, listen carefully for an unbelievable idea. He saw a world on fire. He saw a world on fire and he said, could it be that this world exists without a manhig? What does it mean, a world on fire? So Rav Moshe explained, listen to this. If you ever see a candle that's lit, a flame. Now a really good flame in a room without any wind, steady flame, will look like a constant fire. That's what it looks like. Okay? Now think about an oil flame. Let's keep it simple. An oil flame. An oil flame, what does it do? It has the oil in the base. Then you have the wick, which absorbs the oil, and then that produces a flame. Now this candle thing is so good at doing it. It absorbs the oil, produces a flame. Absorbs the oil, and another flame. Every second it's producing another flame. But it's so good at doing it, it doesn't go like this. It's just constant. But that's what's happening, and you know the proof is very simple. As soon as you run out of the oil, the flame goes out. Avraham Avinu looked at the world like a flame. He understood the world was on fire. That means it looks like a constant. This is solid. But he understood, one second, what causes this whole thing? What's holding it all up? A causes B, that causes C, that causes D, that causes A. It's all being held up beautifully. But what's causing that to continue? Maybe I'll say it this way. What law of nature is there that says the laws of nature should continue? Sounds a bit funny, that, right? Well, that's just how it has been for all these years. What's causing the whole thing to be held up? And Avraham Avinu saw a world on fire. What's called we say in davening, he's machadesh b'tuvay b'chol yom tomid. All the time, Hashem is willing the world into existence. The flame is going like this all the time. It's just so good that it doesn't do any flickering. It's just constant, like a flame, like a candle. Hashem, that's what he saw. He looked at the world and he saw fire. He said, Klum yesh olam bli manhig. Could it be a world without a constant driver who's moving this world? And Hashem says, you're right. Hitzitz olav balabira. Hashem appeared to him. 72 years of work before he got to that. In other words, of questioning. And having a question is good. Question, the root of the word question is quest. You've got to be on a quest. You've got to move. Answers don't come so easily. You've got to work. It doesn't just happen automatically. And when do you really get the answer? When you absorb the information. So what we've learned today is the pathway of life. Is Avraham Avinu's Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, number one, Lahanoscha L'Tevoscha. Realize this journey is for you. It's going to make what's in it for me? What's in it for you? It's the best you could possibly become. What we've learned is this journey takes time. And what we've learned is Avraham's journey and our journey of every single person is to be able to take knowledge and absorb it, to look at the world and absorb it, to think about it, to contemplate it, not to be superficial. Things will impact you when they resonate, when they come inside of you. You'll know today, and you'll bring it into your heart. That takes a lot of effort. And that's why we made brachos, as we said. And that's when you'll start to see Hashem in this world. When you start to contemplate and absorb this world, you'll start to get to know Hashem. There's much more to say. Bez Hashem, next time, we'll stop over here. Happy to take